talk a little bit about how language on some of our campuses has been viewed as violence, and actual violence is now viewed as protest. I just thought that was an incredible formulation and very balanced, by the way. Really impressive in the midst of such a fraught moment that you wrote so sanely and calmly about all this. I just thought it was terrific. I mean, I really, really commend you. Just wonderful. Speaking of leadership.
So right now, there's this terrible war underway in the Middle East. There's another terrible war underway, of course, on the European continent between Ukraine and Russia. And then there are the tragedies going on around the world that don't seem to interest campus protesters very much. So the largest displacement maybe in the history of the human race is happening right now in the country of Sudan. But somehow that seems to get less attention as the Syrian civil war did. But on the Israel-Palestine piece, which is so fraught, so emotional, people have views, and it's a free society. You should be able to express your views, whatever those views are. But the question is, what does it mean to express a view? And in certain quarters, there's a conception of protest that says, unless it's disruptive, unless it's threatening, unless it's symbolically violent, it's not really protest at all. It's something. It's the worst thing you can do, according to this view, is something called respectability politics. Respectability politics looks, like when the civil rights protesters, they put on their suit and tie and their best dresses, and they carried signs and they marched in an orderly way. That was respectability politics, and that's bad. What is good is when the Black Panthers take AK-47s and stand on the steps of the Capitol. That's a proper way to protest. And you might say, who won and who lost? The people who are in their best church clothes carrying the placards, they won. And the Black Panthers all ended up in prison. But the Black Panthers were having a better time, and that's what matters. So I talked about this, is that the pro-Palestinian speech, of course, pro-Palestinian speech should be protected by the First Amendment the same as anybody else's. But if your vision of speech means smashing windows, or if it means taking a bullhorn and hitting somebody on the head and knocking him to the sidewalk so that he cracks his head and dies, if it means attacking people's cameras because you think you have a right to protest in public without being photographed, which you don't, but you're claiming this non-existent right. So you then in order to protect your non-existent right not to be photographed when you protest in public, you attack somebody who does photograph you and violate his actual right to walk around without being physically assaulted. These are all parts of, I think, an ethos of political protest. It's not the Palestinian cause attracts the worst elements of this. It's not unique to them. You see it in some parts of the climate community, but there's something uniquely attractive to this cause of symbolic violence that then spills over, oftentimes, into actual violence. And there isn't a First Amendment right to do that. There's a scene that has been floating around the internet just yesterday. It takes place at a shopping mall in Toronto, where a bunch of protesters were harassing a Zara store, and they're being filmed. And one of the protesters, directly in front of a police officer, turns to the person photographing him and says, if you keep photographing me, I'm going to put you 6 feet under. Well, there's no constitutional right. Even in Canada, the rules are a little different, but in Canada or the United States, there's no constitutional right to issue a death threat to somebody on camera in front of a police officer.